Bipartisan bill has passed in both the Oregon House and Senate. The package is made up of House Bills 2001 and 5019. It funds Governor Tina Kotek's homelessness state of emergency, which she declared on her first day in office back in January. The bill is now on her desk. The housing package extends support to rural and coastal Oregon, increases shelter capacity, addresses youth homelessness, rapid rehousing efforts, and rental assistance, among other things. Some of the money from the housing package will be distributed within weeks. Governor Kotek says she's deeply grateful for elected leaders on both sides of the aisle who supported the package. The housing bill moved through the House and Senate rapidly and passed with support from both Republicans and Democrats. It appears to be quite a feat for both the governor and Oregon Legislature. What does it signal for the rest of the session? Here's my K2 colleague, Barry Mangold, with more on that.
Joining me now is political analyst and Pacific University professor Jim Moore. Jim, thank you so much for taking the time.
Good to be with you this morning.
I want to start with the Oregon Legislature moving such a large bill, talking about the housing bill, the bills really. What does it mean to have such a large bill move so quickly through the legislature and with bipartisan support?
Well, it shows a couple of things. First of all, it shows that the bipartisanship is crucial. When you have it, things can happen rather quickly. Secondly, it shows that the homeless issue, which was big for all three major candidates in the governor's race, was something that was important when we got into the actual legislative session with the new governor. So people have come through basically on their campaign promises. We're going to do something. Here's the plan. Let's move on it. And then another important thing, it's kind of a weird mix of what fiscally you can do in this fiscal year, and then beginning July 1st, the next fiscal year. And so by the fact that of them getting it done so quickly, they'll actually be able to take about $30 million right now and get that out to cities and counties and other areas like that immediately, basically this coming week.
How big of a victory is it for the governor who had campaigned on this issue? How big of a victory is it for Governor Tina Kotek to have the bill where it stands now?
It's a political victory. There's no doubt about it. That makes a big difference in the building of the Capitol. However, does it make a big difference outside of the Capitol for us and the rest of the state? And quite frankly, right now, we don't know. What we know will lead to a political victory for her is if people in their communities begin to see a difference. They see, oh, this money's come to my community. We're housing people in apartments that we were not able to house before. We're able to move people off the streets, put them in places that are safe for them, that are warm for them, that we weren't able to see before. It's when that kind of actual policy hits the road and we see a difference in communities, then that will begin to build into a political victory or political momentum for the governor. Right now, she's on the political side, great. But in the real world where voters are, it's going to take a while to see if that actually translates over there.
Well, let's stick with the real world. We know that this bill involves, like you mentioned, so many different parties, counties, communities, locals, governments, all that. Do you think that everyone who is involved with these bills in some way, shape, or form sees this movement as a victory?
Yeah, I really do. I mean, this passed overwhelmingly in both houses. It's just strong support. There were people who opposed it, but just not that many of them. And it's also going to make a difference even if you oppose it. If the money comes into your jurisdiction, you'll say, you bet I'm going to use the money. And so I think we're going to have buy-in across the state. There's a little bit of an issue because certain counties haven't qualified for the money. They have to basically say, oh, our homelessness problem meets these thresholds, so we need to be part of this. Some of them are now in the process of saying, hey, we want to be part of it as well as we move forward. So that's still going on. But for the most people in the state, probably at this point, about 80 to 85% of the population live in counties and cities where this money is going to be there. It'll be effective. People will begin to see a change, and then that'll translate into that political victory if it happens.
I know that homeless issues and homelessness in general is a top-line political issue, specifically in this state, in this session, for not only the governor but several different lawmakers. And I get the sense that the governor and every single lawmaker attached to this bill has a lot on the line with this package. and that it's important for Oregonians, just everyday people, to see a noticeable difference with the homelessness issue in the state. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the next step is, and this was brought up by several people, but the main one was Tim Knopp, who's the leader of the Republicans in the Senate. We now need to work on housing issues, because a part of the reason why we have a homelessness issue is because housing prices have ballooned out of reach of so many people. Housing is in short supply in many places. And so that'll be kind of the regular session. The regular budget needs to begin to look at that side of the equation as well. In effect, the homelessness is the triage. We have a problem now. We need to deal with it now as quickly as we can and as well as we can. But the housing side of it is the long-term thinking. How do we move so when this happens again, we are ready for it, so we can begin to build places for people to come to Oregon to be able to live and thrive here in our economy and our wonderful amenities that we have here in the state.
Certainly a multifaceted issue, but no doubt that we've seen that this spending package is a sign of momentum for the governor's agenda. What do you think Governor Kotek needs to do to keep that momentum on this issue, being homelessness and the housing crisis?
Well, she's doing some of that. I mean, she's still in the process of doing her tour of counties around the state, which is going to take about a year for her to do that. And so she'll go to local places and she'll push on it. She'll see, is it working out here? What do we need to do more? That kind of thing. So that's one thing that she needs to do. But the second thing she needs to do, remember, this is a $200 million package. Now, for you and me, that's a lot of money. For the Oregon 2-year budget, it's less than 1% of the budget. And so, quite frankly, we need to look at what the legislature and the governor are doing with the rest of that more or less $25 billion in the 2-year budget. How is it dealing with this number one issue that people see around the state? Remember there, it's competing with K through 12 education, it's competing with crime, it's competing with all sorts of things. So how in that competition does housing and the homelessness issue compete and work out in that larger budget discussion?
Yeah, it certainly is worth remembering that $200 million is a drop in the bucket when it comes to the entire state budget. But I know that one thing that's really unique about this package and this spending deal that we've seen so far is that both Republicans and Democrats have gotten behind it and that it's had bipartisan momentum. Do you think that there are any other topics in the state legislature right now that will see the same bipartisan support and cooperation?
I think there's a good chance that anything that has to do with housing could, but then you get into things like public safety, and that can be in a variety of ways. For instance, just in this past week, we've seen Democratic gun issues have come before the legislature, and they're really not getting much buy-in from Republicans. So that's going to be a partisan kind of thing. K through 12 education and the spending on that often ends up with everybody on the same page, but there's a lot of partisanship to get there. And so we'll see how that plays out. So it's interesting. I mean, right now in the Senate, for instance, the Senate Republicans, who are in the minority, still require that every single bill be read word by word. They're trying to slow down the business of the Senate as basically a way of saying, hey, we're here, you have to pay attention to us. So that kind of partisanship is still going on. We'll see if it lasts as we go through the session, but it's still there and it's still tough to overcome.
I want to ask about one thing that you mentioned, and that is the gun violence prevention package that the Democrats introduced. No Republicans have signed on to the bills as sponsors so far. Do you see any chance of bipartisan support on that package?
I do, but the Democrats may have to break off parts of it to get that support. So we'll see what they do. It's important to remember that in Oregon, when gun legislation like this has passed, it has not passed with bipartisan support. It's passed because the Democrats have had a majority. They've used that majority. The majority is held together. And so there's not a history of the Republicans saying, oh, if only you did it differently, we'd come on board. The Republicans have opposed basically all the gun legislation up to now. And the Democrats have said, hey, they're not going to come on board, so what the heck? We'll just do it ourselves. And so there's a culture that goes back for 15 or 20 years on these kinds of bills that says partisanship is there. If the Democrats have a big enough majority, they'll try to pass things. So that's where we are in that discussion.
So at this point, bipartisanship is possible when it comes to that gun violence prevention package and similar bills on that topic. Do you think that there is going to be any chance that Democrats really try to exercise bipartisanship with those packages, or do you think that they'll just use that majority as they see fit?
It quite frankly depends on what they see as their chances of getting bipartisanship. Is bipartisanship just one or two Republicans? If it is, then if I were the Democratic leadership, I'd say, hey, let's make sure the ghost gun part is separate, because we know we're going to get 2 or 3 Republicans to support that. Great. But if they're not going to get them, what's the point? And so those kinds of negotiations and talks are going on behind the scenes, and the Republican leadership will figure out how they navigate that. The Democratic leadership will figure out how they navigate it. And we on the outside will watch and see, is this business as usual with just a Democratic majority and only Democrats doing this? Or is there beginning to be Republicans who are saying, yeah, there are some things in guns where we do need to change what the reality is right now?
So far, homelessness and housing and gun violence prevention have kind of taken center stage, mainly housing and homelessness. But are there any other topics or major bills or just any other topics that you think will get some attention later on this session?
Yeah, I do. There's a couple of things that have to do with land use. Oregon has had its land use system for 50 years. Our land use system basically says we want to preserve rural land. We don't want California to happen where suburbs just march out into the farmland. So it's got its problems, it's got its great things, but it's 50 years old. There are 2 very interesting things happening in the legislature right now. The interesting thing number 1, give the governor power to move rural land to urban land so we can quickly build a factory on it. And so this is tied up in the whole idea of the Federal CHIPS Act, of the idea that we want to attract high-tech manufacturing here to build more computer chip factories. The second land use one is fascinating to me as well, and it's in process. There are a number of proposals in the Willamette Valley to make gigantic factory farms, especially for poultry. And clearly the people around it, whether you're Republican or Democrat, don't want that for water quality issues, smell, etc. But then there's a move in the legislature to put an 8-year moratorium on those kinds of farms, either building them from scratch or expanding an existing farm. That would also change the land use system that we have. And so that's something that it will be growing. It'll depend on how far the legislature goes with it. But that in the past has raised a lot of concerns, excitement on some parts, fear on other parts around the state as we tinker with our land use system, and it's 50 years.